Welcome back everyone to another episode of Project E. This is, I believe, episode 7 now, so we have definitely come a long way from what we've actually started off with. At first I was actually hoping to get rid of roughly about 70 different decks, and that is still definitely the goal, but of course if we do manage to reach that goal beforehand, then we'll just continue on and try to get rid of as many more decks as we can possibly do so, because the less decks I have, the better, for 3 particular reasons. Number 1, I spend less time on all of these decks collectively, and as a result I could spend more of my time on the decks that I truly want to. That way I could actually improve on those particular decks that I have left over, which would be much more beneficial than to have a lot of decks out there and be distracted from each one all the time. Second reason is the fact that it simply just saves money. You have to keep on buying new cards to upgrade all of these decks, because let's face it, all of these archetypes eventually receive support. It's quite a tedious thing to actually do, to constantly go out and look for things, and by selling it off you're actually just getting your money back, so it's definitely fantastic. And lastly, it does obviously decrease the clutter I have around in my room. There's limited space and you want to have the most minimalistic amount of things, so by getting rid of so many decks it has definitely helped out in space management, so that is definitely quite a beneficial thing as well. But those are the 3 things that I want to actually gain out of this particular project, and so far things have actually been working well. So last time we actually left off, we were pretty much in this moment where we decided that we needed to get rid of 17 more decks until we actually reached our goal of 70. So for that, today I'm going to be going over a few more decks that I've actually decided to part ways with. Some of these have been around for just a very small period of time. However, a few of these other ones have been there for me a long time actually, and unfortunately I've just decided to let them go. But before we get started, I would like to remind you guys to drop a like, share, comment and subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video, and also hit that bell notification as well, it really does help. So starting off here, the first deck I wanted to talk about is Starry Night. So Starry Night, you guys might have remembered that I opened up the Ghosts from the Past set, and I was able to actually get a few of the Starry Night cards. I thought about actually building them, and I even had a friend who was actually willing to give me some of his Starry Night cards as well that he pulled, and that way I could actually start and build a deck. Instead of buying the packs to open up, I could actually just slowly grab singles of people and whatever they want. But unfortunately, just by seeing how short printed a lot of the cards were from Ghost from the Past, I realized it was going to be a very tough task to actually finish building this deck, so I pretty much wanted to give up before I dug myself into a deeper hole. So it is going to be one of the decks that is unfortunately never going to be built. However, moving on, the next deck we have here is Melfi's. Now Melfi's is actually quite a budget deck. It's filled with mostly commons and maybe a super rare or 2, but with that being said, despite the fact that there's not really many expensive cards, I mean there's none at all, you could probably get the core for maybe about $5 or less, and it's also a really easy deck to build as well. But I did think about whether or not this deck was a good representation of who I was as a duelist, and it just simply didn't bode well for me. I just didn't seem to keep a strong interest in this particular deck, and through testing it just didn't hold its own. Even in a casual standpoint, it felt kind of lackluster to me. On to the third deck, we have here Fableds. Now Fableds is a deck that I have not accumulated any of the old cards. However, when the new support actually came out, while looking through a bunch of bulk at one of my local card stores, I was actually able to accumulate some of the cards, the newer ones at least, for the Fableds, and I even considered building the deck for a certain period of time. I do love the new synchro. In fact, I think I have actually a deck built up, so I'll put up a screenshot of my Dueling Nexus deck for the Fabled Fable deck, unless I've deleted it already, but I'm not sure yet. I'll just show you a screenshot. If there is one, then you guys will see the deck that I've actually built out of it. But I was essentially just playing around with the deck, and I have actually played Fabled before a long time ago, back when it was around 2012, 2013, but it was all on Dueling Network. It was all on done online, and I never actually got the chance to build nor play the real life deck. But with that being said, it is a deck that I thought I'll just let go for now. I don't want to actually focus on it. It was just a deck that seemed a bit too lackluster. It was very vulnerable, because as a combo deck you would want to have some cards that would be able to play through, but I just found that when playing these games it was so easy to stop the combos for Fableds that you had a really difficult time just recovering. So because of that, I've chosen to give up on Fableds. Now the next deck here might be a very interesting one for you guys to hear, but if you guys recall from previous episodes, I have got rid of the Adamanticators and the Eldritch, and the reason why I got rid of those decks was because I had no interest in them. But both of those decks came in the same set, Secret Slayers. Now you're wondering, why did I even buy Secret Slayer packs in the first place? Well, it wasn't to get the Adamanticators or the Eldritch cards, it was to actually get the Rika cards so that I could actually build a deck out of it. However, now that I've actually done some playtesting with the deck, again I found that Rika just wasn't for me. It kind of was similar to the fact that I was describing in one of my earlier videos, just 2 or 3 videos ago. I'll throw a screenshot for you guys to see, but I talked about how waifu decks have actually become this thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! To just get players into it, and the thing is this, I kind of fell for that trap, you know. I fell for the whole building a waifu deck, but when it came to actually the gameplay itself, the deck was just not unique. The deck didn't really hold up its own. It just wasn't really enough to get me interested to continue building the deck, and as a result I just decided to part ways with it as well. Now moving on, I would like to actually quickly mention to you guys that although I haven't actually built it yet, or I haven't actually started, and it's not technically part of the list, I am deciding to give up on any of the decks that came out in Lightning Overdrive, just because I think that if I want to dig myself a deeper hole, I'll do it for a deck that actually is something that is a better representation of who I am as a duelist, and the decks that came in Lightning Overdrive just doesn't do it for me. So unfortunately I'm just gonna have to pass up on that particular set, but I will get singles for a lot of the more generic support that's actually been released in that set. That also goes without saying for Ancient Guardians as well, the Arctic, the Sulphur Cord, and the Ogdoadics. Unfortunately, I won't be building any of the decks there. I haven't even attempted them yet, so, well, I have actually played those decks and tested it out, but unfortunately, I've just decided not to build any of those decks in real life, because you guys have already seen me build the Arctic deck. You've seen the deck profile I've put up, but it was for Dueling Nexus, and it just wasn't a deck that really stood well for me. So unfortunately, all of those will definitely have to go as well. But since I technically never started building any of those decks, I'm not including it into this list. However, moving on here, I'll also be getting rid of Marine Cess. Now, the Marine Cess was a bunch of cards that I wanted to actually build, because Aoi was one of the characters from Yu-Gi-Oh! Reigns who played Marine Cess, which kind of, I guess, paved the way for a bit of interest for me to build. But after further looking through the deck itself and accumulating a lot of cards, I just decided to give up on them. I did come quite close to actually completing the deck and getting every single card I need for the deck, but unfortunately I think it has to end now, and it's better I just don't continue with it. One of the reasons I even wanted to build it in the first place was mainly because it was a Cyverse deck, but it was just me forcing myself to build a Cyverse deck that I wasn't truly interested in, so unfortunately, yeah, it's something that I'm just not going to continue. But with that being said, moving on here, I'm also going to be getting rid of the Mathmex. The math mechs were a really short-lived deck, unfortunately. It was something that, although it had its time to show off its stuff, it just didn't work out. I mean, it came out in Mystic Fighters alongside the Generaids and the Dragon Maids, but just like the Secret Slayers set where I've decided to give up on all 3 of the archetypes, just like the Ancient Guardians where I've decided to give up on them, the same thing's going to have to apply here for Mystic Fighters as well. I'm giving up on my Math Mech deck, and yes, although you guys have actually seen a deck profile and test stand videos for the Math Mechs, unfortunately it just doesn't do it for me. It felt like a Cyverse deck in its own unique sense, but because it was too similar to a Cyverse deck which I already owned, I figured there's no point in actually keeping the Math Mechs. It was better off that I got rid of them, and it's also going to save me a lot of money because to continue to build it would mean I would actually have to get Math Mech Alimbertion, which is a very expensive card, so it's definitely gotta go. And you guys know what that means. It pretty much means that all of the Mystic Fighter archetypes are pretty much just going to be gone as well, alongside the Secret Slayers as well as the Ancient Guardians. Next here we have the Speedroids. Now the Speedroids are a very interesting case because I've never actually featured this deck on my channel before, but it was a deck that I've played for a long time. It was back when Wind Witches was first introduced, and I actually built a Speedroid Wind Witch deck. It worked out quite well. However, as time went along, bits and pieces of the Speedroids just continued to come out, and because of that, it was just so hard to accumulate bits and pieces of those cards, and it just felt like a tedious task at this point. And with more Speedroids on the way, I just didn't want to get myself into all that mess, so because of that, I'm going to be parting ways with my Speedroid deck, even though I didn't have the chance to actually feature it on the channel. But rest assured, I will be keeping my Wind Witches, so I think there's enough cards to actually build a deck with them separately now, without the Speedroid's help. And I will still be keeping the Speedroid engine like Terratops and Tarkatomborg to help facilitate my different decks. But as for the pure variants, I'm going to be parting ways with them as well. Finally, we have here the Evil Twins. The Evil Twins was a deck that came out in Genesis Impact, and honestly, out of all of the decks that came out in Genesis Impact, I thought the one that I would be least interested in was the Magistus, but it turns out after playing the Magistus, it's far too fun. I just had to keep it, so yeah, it was just a really interesting deck and I loved it too much and ended up just keeping it, and I don't think it's going to be featured on an episode of Project E. However, when it comes to the Evil Twins, after testing them out, it just doesn't do it for me. Again, it's also one of those particular archetypes where a lot of the cards are expensive. The Link monsters are both, I think, respectively $20 and $25, which means if I'm having to get a playset of each of the Link monsters, and believe me, you need to play 3 of each, it's going to be very expensive to build the deck. And the deck doesn't really do too well as well. It's considered to be a casual deck, if not less. Therefore, I think there's really little point in actually continuing with this deck. It's best to sell it off so that I could actually just save up on some money and also focus on what I really want to focus on. However, that was pretty much it for the decks for today. I got rid of, I believe, 8 decks, which is definitely quite a lot of progress. This brings us down to 9 more decks until we reach our goal, and we are currently on episode 7, so we still have 5 more episodes which follow after this, and the fact that I've made this much progress, I'm very happy. But I just had to be more strict with myself. I had to get rid of more decks, and hopefully this does the job and puts me one step further to reaching my goal, if not surpassing that goal and getting rid of as many decks more as possible. But that pretty much concludes it for this particular video, so thank you for joining me today. Definitely leave me your thoughts in the comments down below. I hope you all have a fantastic day. I'll see you all next time.